The massive space station floated in the darkness between stars. It was made of crystal and metal, spinning slowly like a giant diamond in space. This was where the Galactic Council met, far from any planet, in neutral space where no species could claim ownership. Ambassador Karen Phillips looked through the window of her ship. She could see hundreds of alien vessels surrounding the station. Some ships looked like giant squids made of metal. Others were perfect spheres that seemed to glow from within. A few resembled massive insects with wings that caught starlight. Each design represented a different species, a different civilization that had traveled across the galaxy to be here today. They really brought everyone, she said quietly. Behind her, Admiral Frank Rodriguez studied the tactical displays on his command screen. The older man had gray hair and deep lines on his face from years of military service. His uniform was simple and black, with only a small Earth symbol on his chest. He didn't look up from his screens as he spoke. 112 ships from 24 different species, he said. The biggest gathering in 50 years. All here to put humanity in its place. Karen turned from the window. She was younger than the Admiral, with short brown hair and sharp green eyes. Her diplomatic uniform was blue and white, the colors of Earth's united government. She had been preparing for this meeting for months, studying alien languages and customs, learning their laws and traditions, but she knew that none of that really mattered today. "They're scared of us," she said. Frank finally looked up. "They should be." 3 months ago, everything had changed. The human mining colony on Sigma Draconis 7 had been destroyed. 8,000 men, women, and children had been killed in minutes when alien warships appeared and opened fire without warning. The colony had been building homes, growing food, raising families. They hadn't even had weapons. The Zefori Empire claimed it was a mistake. They said the colony had violated some ancient treaty about territory rights. But humans had never signed that treaty. They had never even been asked. The door to the bridge opened and Lieutenant Jake Morrison walked in. He was young, maybe 25, with blonde hair cut short in military style. His face was serious as he handed a tablet to the Admiral. "Sir, our other ships are in position," he said. "They're holding behind Ganymede as ordered." Frank nodded and looked at the tablet. On it was a list of 43 human warships, all hidden behind Jupiter's largest moon. The aliens thought humanity only had 3 ships here for the peace talks. They had no idea about the rest of the fleet waiting in the shadows. "Good," Frank said. "Tell them to maintain radio silence. We don't want our friends out there picking up any signals." Karen walked over to look at the tactical display. The 3 human ships that were visible had been positioned exactly where the Council had told them to be. They were surrounded by alien vessels, outnumbered 40 to 1. It looked like humanity had followed all the rules, brought only a small, diplomatic delegation as demanded. "Captain Park is ready on the lead ship," Jake reported. "She says her crew understands the plan." Captain Lisa Park commanded the UES Thunder, the ship that would represent humanity's military during the talks. She had 300 crew members aboard, all volunteers who knew they might not survive the day. The other 2 visible ships, the Lightning and the Storm, were similarly staffed with brave men and women ready to face whatever came. The Zefori dreadnought is moving, Frank noticed on his screen. The massive alien warship was 3 kilometers long, bristling with weapons. It could destroy all 3 human ships in seconds if it wanted to. They're not even trying to hide their intentions. Karen pulled up intercepted communications on her tablet. For weeks, human intelligence had been breaking alien codes and listening to their secret messages. What they had learned was terrifying. The Council didn't want peace. They wanted to make an example of humanity. "Listen to this," she said, reading from the decoded message. "The human delegation will be destroyed during the ceremony. Their deaths will be broadcast to all human colonies as a warning. Any resistance will result in the complete extinction of their species." Jake's face went pale. "They're planning to kill us all?" "Not just us," Frank said grimly. "This is their standard practice. They did the same thing to the Kelari 200 years ago. The Threen before that. Any species that grows too fast or refuses to obey gets eliminated. Karen put down the tablet. 17 species in the last 1,000 years, all destroyed or reduced to slave status. And they call it keeping the peace. Outside, more alien ships continued to arrive. The Andromedans came in vessels that looked like floating cities made of crystal. The Bendathi arrived in spheres filled with water, their tentacled forms visible through transparent walls. Each species took its assigned position, forming a perfect circle around the station and the 3 human ships. "It's a firing squad," Jake observed. "Yes," Frank agreed. "But they've made one mistake. They think we're stupid. They think because we've only had faster-than-light travel for 20 years, we can't possibly understand their technology or their tactics." He pulled up another display, this one showing the hidden human fleet. Each ship was equipped with weapons that human scientists had developed in secret. Some were based on captured alien technology. Others were entirely human innovations, things the aliens had never seen before. Kinetic weapons, Frank explained to Jake, who was still learning. The aliens rely on energy shields that can stop lasers and plasma. But a simple piece of metal moving at near light speed, their shields can't stop that. "And the stealth systems?" Jake asked. "Our greatest achievement," Karen said with pride. "The aliens use sensors based on heat and electromagnetic radiation. Our ships can hide both. To their instruments, our fleet doesn't exist." A communication signal came through. Captain Park's voice filled the bridge. "Ambassador Phillips, Admiral Rodriguez, we're receiving a message from the Council. They're ready to begin." Karen straightened her uniform. "Tell them we're coming aboard." Frank stood up and checked his sidearm, a small weapon hidden under his uniform jacket. "Remember, we need to get them talking. The longer they talk, the more evidence we gather of their true intentions." "And then?" Jake asked. Frank's expression was cold. "Then we show them why it was a mistake to threaten humanity." As they prepared to leave for the station, Karen took one last look at the assembled alien fleet. They were so confident, so sure of their superiority. They had ruled the galaxy for millennia through fear and violence, destroying any species that dared to challenge them. But they had never faced humans before. They didn't know about humanity's history, how they had survived ice ages and plagues, wars and disasters. They didn't know that humans had a saying, "The most dangerous enemy is the one with nothing left to lose." And after the destruction of Colony 7, humanity had decided they had nothing left to lose. The shuttle was ready to take them to the station. As they walked toward it, Frank spoke quietly to Jake. "Stay here and monitor everything. When I give the signal, tell our ghost fleet to drop their stealth." "What's the signal, sir?" Frank almost smiled. "You'll know it when you hear it." The shuttle launched, carrying Karen and Frank toward the Crystal Station. Behind them, 3 human ships waited, surrounded by enemies. And behind Ganymede, 43 more ships waited in perfect silence, their crews ready for the word that would change the galaxy forever. The aliens expected peace talks. They expected humanity to surrender, to accept slavery or death. They had done this many times before with other species. It always worked, but humanity had other plans. The inside of the Galactic Council station was even more impressive than the outside. The walls were made of a material that seemed to shift between solid and liquid, creating patterns that moved like living art. The ceiling stretched up so high, it disappeared into shadows. Strange lights floated in the air without any visible source, casting everything in a soft blue glow. Karen Phillips walked through the main corridor beside Admiral Frank Rodriguez. Their footsteps echoed in the vast space. Around them, dozens of different alien species moved through the station. Some floated, some crawled, some walked on legs that bent in ways that seemed impossible. The air smelled different here, like metal mixed with flowers mixed with something else that had no Earth equivalent. They were being escorted by 2 Zephori guards. The Zephori looked like massive praying mantises, standing 3 meters tall on 6 legs. Their bodies were covered in natural armor that shifted from green to purple as they moved. Each guard carried a weapon that looked like a spear made of pure energy. The council chamber was at the heart of the station, When the massive doors opened, Karen had to stop herself from gasping. The room was enormous, large enough to hold thousands. Seats of every possible shape and size were arranged in circles, rising up like an arena. At the center was a platform, where speakers would stand to address the assembly, and the assembly was already full. Council Prime Executor Vexa Theta stood at the center platform. He was the leader of the Zephyri Empire and, by extension, the most powerful being in the known galaxy. His forearms moved as he spoke to the gathered representatives, his voice being translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. "The humans have arrived," he announced. His compound eyes, each containing thousands of smaller eyes, turned to look at Karen and Frank. "As we requested, they have brought only 3 ships. They understand their position." Murmurs of approval rippled through the chamber. Karen noticed how the different species reacted. The crystalline Andromedans chimed like bells. The aquatic Bendathi, floating in giant water-filled spheres, waved their tentacles in patterns she had learned meant satisfaction. The wolf-like Karathi bared their teeth in what they considered smiles. Karen and Frank were led to a section marked for humanity. The seats were clearly made for beings larger than humans, making them look like children in adult chairs. This was intentional, Karen knew. Everything here was designed to make humanity feel small and insignificant. "Before we discuss the treaty," Vexa Theta continued, "let us review why we are here." A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a map of the galaxy with human colonies marked in red. There were only 42 human worlds, tiny dots compared to the vast territories of the established species. In merely 2 decades, Vexa Theta said, humanity has spread across 42 systems. This is unprecedented. The Kalari took 3 centuries to colonize 20 worlds. The Threen took 500 years to claim 30. Humanity's expansion is aggressive. Frank leaned over to whisper to Karen. Aggressive, that's their word for successful. The display changed, now showing the destroyed Colony 7. The image was taken from a Zephyri warship, showing the moment their weapons turned the entire colony into ash and rubble. Karen felt Frank's hand clench into a fist beside her. "This unfortunate incident," Vexa Theta said, his tone suggesting he felt no regret at all, "occurred because humanity failed to respect established boundaries that have kept peace in this galaxy for millennia." An alien Karen recognized as Ambassador Telix of the Andromedans stood to speak. When Andromedans moved, they looked like living glass sculptures, their bodies refracting light into rainbows. "The humans were warned," Telix said, his voice sounding like wind chimes. "All new species must accept the guidance of the Council. It is for the good of all." "Guidance," Karen whispered to Frank. "They mean control." Back on the human ship Thunder, Captain Lisa Park watched everything through hidden cameras in Karen's and Frank's uniforms. Her bridge crew of 50 officers monitored every alien ship, every weapon system, every communication signal. "Captain," her tactical officer Paul Chen reported, "I'm detecting weapon charging signatures from 12 Zephyri vessels." Lisa nodded. She was expecting this. The plan was already in motion. "How long until they're ready to fire?" "At current rate, 15 minutes. "Perfect timing," Lisa said. "They'll power up during the treaty discussion, then open fire when we refuse to sign." Her communications officer, Danny Kim, looked up from his station. "Captain, the Ghost Fleet is asking for status update. Tell Admiral Rodriguez's fleet we're on schedule. Maintain stealth until the signal." Back in the council chamber, Vexa Theta was still speaking. "The treaty we offer humanity is generous. 12 systems for your people, protection from hostile forces, access to basic council technology. All we ask in return is that you accept your place in the established order." Frank stood up. Even though he was shorter than most of the aliens present, his presence commanded attention. Years of military command had given him a voice that could fill any room. "And what exactly is our place?" he asked. Vex Theta's antennae twitched, a sign of irritation. "A client species of the Zephyri Empire, of course. You would provide resources and workers in exchange for protection and guidance." "Slavery," Frank said simply. You're asking us to accept slavery." Gasps echoed through the chamber. No one had ever spoken so bluntly to the council before. "You dare," Vexitheta began, but Frank continued. "You destroyed 8,000 innocent people, families, children, and now you want us to thank you for offering to make us your slaves?" The Bendathi ambassador, a creature that looked like a giant jellyfish with too many tentacles, floated forward in its water sphere. "The young species does not understand," it gurgled through the translator. "This is how things have always been. The strong guide the weak. It is nature." Karen stood up beside Frank. "On Earth, we have a different understanding of nature. We believe in evolution, in growth, in the right of every species to determine its own destiny." Laughter rippled through parts of the assembly. The Karathi ambassador, his wolf-like head thrown back, howled with amusement. "Rights? Small humans speak of rights. Rights are earned through strength." "Then let's talk about strength," Frank said. He pulled out a small device from his pocket. Immediately, 20 guards moved forward, weapons raised. But the device was just a holographic projector. "3 months ago," Frank said as the projector activated, "you destroyed Colony 7. But that wasn't your first attack on humanity, was it?" The hologram showed an image that made Vexitheta's compound eyes widen. It was a Zephyri probe, the kind used for deep space exploration. 17 years ago, Frank continued, this probe reached Earth. Hidden in its memory banks was a biological weapon, a virus designed to kill 90% of our population, leaving only enough humans alive to serve as workers. The chamber erupted in chaos. Many of the younger species hadn't known about this. They began shouting questions, demanding answers. "Lies!" Vexitheta roared, his forearms waving. "The humans fabricate evidence." Karen activated her own projector. "We have the probe. We reverse-engineered your virus. We know exactly what you planned." The display showed detailed technical specifications, genetic sequences, deployment protocols. It was undeniable proof. "But the virus failed," Karen said. "Your probe crashed in our ocean. By the time we recovered it, the virus had degraded. But we learned from it. We learned about your technology, your biology, your weapons." On the Thunder, Lisa Park watched the alien ship's reactions. "They're accelerating their weapon charging," Paul reported. 10 minutes now." "They're panicking," Lisa observed. "Good. Panicked enemies make mistakes." In the council chamber, more evidence was being displayed. Intercepted communications between Zephyri commanders, orders for the extermination of humanity, plans that had been made months before Colony 7 was destroyed. "You never intended peace," Frank said, his voice carrying across the now silent chamber. "This meeting is a trap. You plan to destroy our delegation, then broadcast our deaths as a warning to all human worlds." Vexitheta's natural armor shifted to a deep purple, a sign of extreme anger. Even if this were true, what could 3 small ships do against the might of the council fleet? Frank smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Who said we only brought 3 ships?" The tactical displays around the chamber suddenly changed. They had been showing the 3 human vessels surrounded by the council fleet. Now 43 additional signatures appeared around the alien ships as if they had materialized from nowhere. "Impossible," clicks of the Andromedans chimed. "Our sensors detected nothing." "Your sensors," Karen said calmly, "are 1,000 years old. Humanity has been innovating for our entire history. We don't just copy technology, we improve it. On every human ship, weapon systems came online, but they didn't target life support or crew quarters. Every weapon was aimed at alien weapon systems and engines. Surgical strikes that would disable, not destroy." Vexitheta raised all 4 arms. "You think this changes anything? You're still outnumbered. Fire on us, and every human world will burn." Frank looked him directly in his compound eyes. "You were going to burn them anyway. The only difference is now you'll have to fight for it." The council chamber erupted into complete chaos. Alien delegates scrambled from their seats, some running for exits, others calling their ships, many simply frozen in shock. The massive holographic displays showed the human fleet surrounding. The Council's vessels, weapons locked and ready. Ambassador Karen Phillips stood calmly at the center of the storm. She raised her hand and her voice amplified through the station's systems, cutting through the panic. "No one needs to die today," she said. "Humanity is not here for revenge. We're here for justice." Vexitheta's four arms trembled with rage. His compound eyes reflected 1,000 images of the human ships that had appeared from nowhere. "You dare threaten the Galactic Council? You primitive apes dare?" Frank Rodriguez stepped forward, his military bearing evident in every movement. "We're not threatening, we're defending ourselves. You plan to execute us during these peace talks. We have the proof." He gestured to the holographic displays, which now showed intercepted Zephyri communications. The messages were clear and damning. Orders to destroy the human delegation, plans to broadcast the execution across human space, detailed strategies for the systematic extinction of humanity. The younger species in the Council were reading these messages with growing horror. The Milani ambassador, a being that looked like a purple cloud with eyes, pulsed with distress. "Is this true? The Council planned murder?" "Maintaining order sometimes requires harsh action," Vex Theta said, but his voice had lost some of its authority. "Harsh action?" Karen repeated. "Let me show the Assembly what you call harsh action." The displays changed again. Now they showed historical records long hidden from public access. The destruction of the Kalari homeworld 2 centuries ago. 3 billion dead. The systematic hunting of Threne colony ships. The biological weapon deployed against the Ventari that reduced their population from billions to mere thousands. 17 species, Karen said, her voice steady but filled with controlled anger. 17 civilizations destroyed or enslaved by the Council in the name of order. And why? Because they grew too fast. Because they asked too many questions. Because they refused to bow. The Bendathi ambassador's tentacles writhed in what Karen had learned was agitation. "These are lies. The Council maintains peace." "Peace through genocide is not peace," Frank said. "It's tyranny." On the bridge of the Thunder, Captain Lisa Park watched her tactical displays with fierce concentration. The alien weapons were almost fully charged. Her crew was ready, fingers hovering over firing controls. "Captain," Paul Chen reported, "the Zephyri dreadnought is attempting to power their main gun." "Time to show them our surprise," Lisa said. "All ships execute pattern Alpha, now!" In space, the human fleet moved with precision that shocked the aliens. 3 destroyers materialized directly beneath the Zephyri dreadnought, having micro-jumped through faster than light space to appear inside the enemy's defensive perimeter. It was a maneuver the aliens thought impossible. FTL jumps required time, calculation, massive amounts of energy. No one could do it in combat. But humans had figured out how. Commander Susan White commanded the lead destroyer. "Fire kinetic rounds," she ordered. The weapons humanity had developed were elegantly simple. While the aliens had spent millennia perfecting energy weapons and shields to stop them, humans had gone back to basics. They accelerated simple tungsten rods to 90% the speed of light. No energy signature for shields to detect and block. Just pure kinetic force. The rounds punched through the dreadnought's hull like paper. But they weren't aimed at crew quarters or life support. Every shot targeted weapon systems and engine cores. In seconds, the mighty dreadnought was dead in space, unable to fight or flee, but with its crew unharmed. "Impossible!" Vexitheta screamed in the council chamber, watching his flagship become helpless. "Our shields only stop energy weapons," Karen finished. "Did you really think humanity would just copy your technology? We innovated, we adapted, we survived." Across the fleet battle, similar scenes played out. Human ships appeared and disappeared, using micro-jumps striking from unexpected angles. Alien vessels found their weapons destroyed, their engines crippled, their shields useless against kinetic weapons they had never imagined facing. Captain Eric Stone of the cruiser Independence executed a maneuver that would be studied in military academies for generations. His ship jumped 7 times in 30 seconds, appearing at a different position each time, firing precise shots that disabled 3 Bendathi cruisers without killing a single crew member. "Sir, the Andromedans are trying to retreat," his tactical officer reported. "Disable their engines," Stone ordered. "No one leaves until this is finished." In the council chamber, the assembled delegates watched their mighty fleet being systematically dismantled. The displays showed ship after ship going dark, floating helpless in space. But alongside the tactical data, another number was displayed: casualties. 0. "You're not killing them," the Milani ambassador observed, his purple form pulsing with confusion. "We're not monsters," Karen said. "We're teachers, and the lesson is simple. The age of the Council's tyranny is over." Vexitheta's armor had shifted to a sickly yellow color, a sign of fear that he couldn't control. "You cannot do this. The galaxy needs order. Without the Council, there will be chaos." "There will be freedom," Frank corrected. "Something you've denied to dozens of species." A new voice spoke from the back of the chamber. It was old, creaky, speaking through a translator that struggled with the words. Everyone turned to see a figure no one had expected. It was a Kalari. The species was supposed to be extinct. The being was small, covered in gray fur that had probably once been silver. Its large eyes were clouded with age, but they burned with a fierce intelligence. "I am Keeper Sen," the Kalari said. "One of the last of my people. We have hidden for 2 centuries, scattered across dead worlds where the Council would not think to look. We watched. We waited. We hoped that someday someone would stand up to the tyranny." He moved forward slowly, using a walking stick that clicked against the floor. "The humans sent us a message 3 months ago. They told us to watch this broadcast. They said that today, everything would change." More figures emerged from the shadows. 3, their butterfly-like wings faded but still beautiful. A group of Ventari, so few that they could be counted on one hand. Representatives of species the Council had claimed were extinct. "We're not dead," one of the Threen said, her voice like whispered music. "We survived. Hidden. Afraid. But alive." Karen smiled. "And you don't have to hide anymore?" The displays changed again. Now they showed human colonies across the galaxy, but more than that, they showed human ships arriving at dead worlds bringing supplies and technology to hidden survivors. They showed human doctors treating Ventari refugees, human engineers helping Threen rebuild their colony ships, human soldiers standing guard over Kalari settlements. "For 3 months, Karen explained. While you planned our execution, we've been finding and protecting every survivor of your genocides. They told us their stories. They showed us the truth the Council has hidden for 1,000 years. Admiral." Rodriguez's voice came through the communication system, broadcast to the entire chamber. "To all species watching this, know that humanity stands ready to defend your freedom. We don't seek to rule. We seek to liberate." On his flagship, the Retribution, Rodriguez stood watching the tactical displays with satisfaction. The entire Council fleet was disabled. Not a single alien ship could fight or flee. But more importantly, not a single life had been lost. "Sir," his communications officer Amy Walsh reported, "we're receiving surrender signals from 70% of the alien vessels." "Tell them surrender isn't necessary," Rodriguez replied. "We're not conquerors. Once we've removed all weapons, they're free to go home." Back in the Council chamber, Vexitheta had collapsed into his seat, his 4 arms hanging limp. The most powerful being in the galaxy had been reduced to nothing in minutes. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Karen walked up to the central platform. She looked around at all the assembled species, at the survivors who had emerged from hiding, at the younger races who were seeing the truth for the first time. "We want what every species wants," she said. "The right to explore, the right to grow, the right to make our own choices and our own mistakes, the right to be free." She pulled out a datapad and placed it on the podium. "This is humanity's proposal. Not a treaty forced at gunpoint, but an offer. Any species that wants to join us in creating a new galactic alliance based on equality and mutual respect is welcome. Those who don't are free to go their own way, as long as they don't threaten others." The Milani ambassador floated forward. "And if we refuse?" "Then you refuse." Frank said simply. But know that humanity will be watching. Any aggression against younger species, any return to the old ways of conquest and genocide, and we will intervene. You can't police the entire galaxy, Vex Theta protested. Karen smiled. We don't have to. We just have to show others that it's possible to stand up to tyranny. Today we've shown that the Council can be defeated. That alone changes everything. The displays now showed something new. Messages were coming in from across the galaxy. Colonies that had lived in fear were declaring independence. Species that had been forced. Space itself seemed to hold its breath as 43 human warships executed their attack with perfect precision. Each movement had been planned, practiced, and refined through hundreds of simulations. Now, in the cold vacuum between stars, humanity showed the galaxy what they had learned in just 20 years of studying alien technology. Admiral Frank Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching as his fleet took apart the most powerful armada in known space. His crew moved with calm efficiency. No celebration, no cheering. This wasn't about victory. It was about survival. Ghost Squadron, target the Andromedan's crystal matrix cores, he ordered. Don't shatter them, just disconnect the power flow. 3. Human frigates appeared from stealth positions above the Andromedan vessels. The crystalline ships were beautiful, looking like frozen starlight given form. Their weapons were based on harmonic frequencies that could shake apart molecular bonds, devastating against any enemy who didn't understand the science. But humans understood. They had studied captured Andromedan technology for years. Commander Betty Anderson led the attack from the frigate Defiance. Fire disruption pulses on my mark, she commanded. 3, 2, 1, mark. The human ships fired weapons that made no visible beam, no dramatic light show. They sent out waves that interfered with the harmonic frequencies the Andromedans used for everything, from weapons to propulsion to life support. It was like playing a counternote that canceled out their entire symphony. The crystal ships flickered, their inner light fading. They began to drift, helpless but intact. No Andromedan would die today, but they would remember that humanity could have killed them all if they had chosen to. Meanwhile, Captain Lisa Park on the Thunder was dealing with the Bendathi fleet. The aquatic aliens had surrounded their ships, with water shields, millions of tons of liquid that could absorb almost any energy weapon. They think water makes them invincible, Paul Chen observed from Tactical. Lisa smiled. Show them what happens to water in vacuum when you remove the containment field. The Thunder fired a single specialized missile. It wasn't aimed at the Bendathi ship itself, but at the field generators that held their water shield in place. The missile detonated, sending out an electromagnetic pulse specifically tuned to disrupt the containment. The water shield exploded outward, instantly freezing in the vacuum of space. The Bendathi vessel was surrounded by a cloud of ice crystals, blind and defenseless. But the ship itself was unharmed, its crew safe inside their aquatic environment. Sir, they're requesting immediate ceasefire, Danny Kim reported from communications. Tell them to power down all weapons and we'll consider it, Lisa replied. On the cruiser Independence, Captain Eric Stone was facing the most dangerous threat. 3 Karathi battlecruisers had formed a pack, using their traditional hunting formation. The wolf-like aliens were the Council's military specialists, their entire culture built around combat and honor. They're trying to triangulate us, his navigation officer warned. If they complete the formation, they won't, Stone said calmly. Execute the crazy Ivan. It was a maneuver humans had named after an old Earth submarine tactic. The Independence suddenly reversed its thrust while simultaneously rotating on 3 axes. To the Karathi, it looked like the human ship had gone insane, breaking every rule of space combat. But there was method to the madness. As the Independence spun, it released dozens of small drones, each one broadcasting the same energy signature as the main ship. Suddenly, instead of 1 target, the Karathi faced 50. Their pack formation collapsed as they tried to identify the real threat. In that moment of confusion, the Independence struck. Kinetic rounds, invisible against the darkness of space, slammed into the Karathi weapons arrays. The proud warriors found themselves defanged in seconds. The Karathi pack leader's voice came through on an open channel. How? We are the masters of space combat. How did primitive humans defeat us? Stone responded on the same channel, knowing the entire fleet would hear. Because you've been fighting the same way for 1,000 years. We've been innovating for our entire existence. Evolution versus tradition. Guess which one wins? Back in the council chamber, the assembled delegates watched their fleet being picked apart like a training exercise. Every tactical doctrine they had relied on for millennia was being countered, bypassed, or simply ignored. Vexatheta's compound eyes were fixed on the displays showing his dreadnought. The pride of the Zephori Empire, a ship that had never known defeat, was now dark and drifting. Its weapons were slag, its engines were dead, but its crew of 3,000 was unharmed. Why? He asked, turning to Karen Phillips. Why spare us? You have every reason to destroy us all. Karen's expression was serious but not cruel. Because we're trying to build something better. Genocide isn't justice, it's just another atrocity. The Milani ambassador floated closer, his purple form shifting with curiosity. Your ships, they move through FTL in combat. The power requirements alone should be impossible. Frank Rodriguez allowed himself a small smile. Impossible by your standards. You've had FTL for so long you never thought to improve it. It's always been good enough. We had to start from scratch, so we asked different questions. What questions? The Milani genuinely wanted to know. Instead of asking how to make bigger power cores, Frank explained, we asked how to use less power. Instead of calculating complete jump solutions, we developed predictive algorithms that could plot micro jumps in milliseconds. Instead of shielding against the radiation, we learned to use it as additional fuel. On the human flagship, Rodriguez received a priority message from Earth. President Maria Santos appeared on his private screen, her face showing both pride and concern. Admiral, the attack is being broadcast on every human world. Our people are watching their military save them from extinction. But I need to know, can we hold what we've taken? Rodriguez looked at his tactical display. Every council ship was disabled. The most powerful fleet in the galaxy had been neutralized in less than 17 minutes. Madam President, we won't have to hold anything. After today, no one will dare attack humanity again. He was proven right moments later when new signals appeared on the long-range sensors. Ships from dozens of smaller species were approaching the battle site. They had been watching, waiting to see who would win. Now they were broadcasting messages of support for humanity. The Talari Federation stands with humanity. The Roxanne Collective requests alliance with Earth. The Independent. Worlds of Kasan offer trade agreements. These were species that had lived in fear of the Council for generations. They had never dared to speak out before. But seeing the Council fleet helpless had given them something they had lost long ago. Hope. In the Council chamber, Keeper Sen of the Kalari was addressing the assembly. His old voice carried the weight of 2 centuries of hiding and suffering. My people once numbered in the billions, he said. We had art, music, science. We were explorers, dreamers, builders. Then we grew too fast, expanded too far. The Council decided we were a threat. He pointed one gnarled finger at Vexatheta. Your empire killed 3 billion Kalari in a single day. You hunted the survivors for decades. You erased us from history, told the galaxy we never existed. It was necessary, Vexatheta said, but his voice was weak. You would have destabilized. We would have lived, Sen interrupted. We would have made our own choices, our own mistakes. That is the right of every sentient being. The old Kalari turned to address the other species. The humans found us 3 months ago. They could have used our knowledge of Council weaknesses for their advantage alone. Instead, they shared their resources, their medicine, their protection. They asked for nothing in return except our testimony here today. More survivors stepped forward. Each told their story. The Threen spoke of their colony ships being hunted through deep space. The Ventari described the plague that had nearly wiped them out. Species after species revealed the truth behind the Council's 1,000-year peace. Commander Susan White's voice came through the communication system. Ambassador Phillips, Admiral Rodriguez, we have completed the disarmament. All Council vessels are neutralized, requesting further orders. Karen looked around the chamber at the frightened Council members, at the hopeful survivors, at the younger species learning the truth for the first time. Admiral Rodriguez, begin Phase 2, she said. Outside, the human fleet began something unprecedented. They moved to the disabled alien ships and began repairs. Not full repairs, just enough to restore life support and basic propulsion. Enough for the defeated fleet to limp home. What are you doing? Vexitheta demanded. Showing mercy, Karen replied. Something the Council forgot long ago. She pulled up a new holographic display. It showed a document written in dozens of languages. This is the Charter of Free Worlds. Any species that signs it agrees to basic principles. No genocide, no slavery, no forced technological limitations, no attacks on developing species. In return, members gain access to shared technology, mutual defense, and free trade. And if we refuse to sign? The Bendathi ambassador gurgled. Then you go home, Frank said. You rebuild. You continue as you were. But if you ever threaten another species again, if you ever return to the old ways, humanity and our allies will stop you. You're only one species. Vextheta Prot. 6 months had passed since the battle that changed everything. The massive council chamber that had once echoed with Vexitheta's commands now hosted a very different gathering. Representatives from 32 species sat in a circle. No throne. No elevated platform for those who thought themselves superior. Everyone was equal here. Karen Phillips stood at what they called the speaking circle, a simple space where any representative could address the assembly. She wore not the formal, diplomatic uniform of Earth, but simple clothes that any human might wear. The message was clear. This was not about power or status, it was about people. The third meeting of the Free Systems Alliance is now in session, she announced. The name had been chosen carefully. Not an empire, not a council, but an alliance. Free systems working together by choice, not force. Admiral Frank Rodriguez, now retired from military service, sat in the section reserved for military advisors. He had traded his uniform for civilian clothes, but everyone knew who he was. The man who had led the Ghost Fleet. The admiral who had defeated the council without taking a single life. Beside him sat Captain Lisa Park, also retired, now serving as Earth's military liaison to the Alliance. She was reading reports from across the galaxy, and what she saw made her smile. The Karathi have requested permission to join our training exercises, she told Frank quietly. They want to learn human combat tactics. Frank chuckled. The masters of space combat want to learn from us? Apparently, getting defeated in 17 minutes was very educational, Lisa replied. At the speaking circle, a new figure stepped forward. It was Keeper Sen of the Kalari, but he looked different from 6 months ago. His gray fur had regained some of its silver shine. His clouded eyes were clearer. Being free, truly free, had given him new life. My people have something to report, he said, his voice stronger than before. We have reclaimed our homeworld. Applause filled the chamber, a human custom that other species had adopted. The Kalari homeworld had been empty for 2 centuries, its cities in ruins, its forests burned. But with help from human terraforming technology and volunteers from a dozen species, it was becoming alive again. The first Kellari children in 200 years were born last week, Sen continued, his voice thick with emotion. 7 healthy cubs. They will grow up never knowing what it means to hide, to fear, to pretend they don't exist. From across the chamber, one of the Threen survivors spread her faded wings. The Threen colony fleet has found a new world. With the navigation, data provided by humanity, we have located a system perfect for our species. We name it New Beginning. These were the victories that mattered now. Not conquests or surrenders, but life returning where it had been extinguished, hope growing where it had been crushed. But not everyone was celebrating. In a corner of the chamber separated from the main assembly sat Vexitheta. The former prime executor of the council was much diminished. His armor had lost its shine. His forearms moved slowly. His compound eyes rarely lifted from the floor. The Zefori Empire still existed, but it was a shadow of its former self. Without their military dominance, without the fear they had cultivated, for millennia, they had discovered an uncomfortable truth. No one liked them. Their former client species had all declared independence. Their resource worlds had cut off supply lines. They were alone. The Zefori request permission to address the assembly, Vexus Theta said, his voice barely audible. Karen looked around at the other representatives. Many showed anger, others suspicion. The Milani ambassador pulsed an agitated purple. The Bendathi's tentacles writhed with displeasure. These species had suffered under Zefori rule for generations. You may speak, Karen said finally. But know that words alone won't erase centuries of oppression. Vexitheta moved to the speaking circle slowly, like he carried a great weight. When he spoke, his words shocked everyone. The Zefori Empire formally requests membership in the Free Systems Alliance. The chamber erupted. Shouts of outrage, sounds of disbelief, the Karathi actually growled. The species that had ruled through fear and violence now wanted to join the alliance that had ended their reign. Frank stood up. You have some nerve, he said, his voice cutting through the chaos. You killed billions. You enslaved entire civilizations. And now you want to join us? We have nowhere else to go, Vexus Theta admitted. Our empire is collapsing. Our people are starving. The technologies we hoarded for ourselves, we never learned to innovate with them. We only knew how to take from others. Now, with no one to take from, we are dying. It was a pathetic sight, the most powerful being in the galaxy reduced to begging. Many in the chamber felt satisfaction seeing their former oppressor brought so low. But Karen raised her hand for silence. The Charter of the Free Systems Alliance says any species can apply for membership, even former enemies. You cannot be serious, the Bendathi ambassador gurgled. They are monsters. They were monsters, Karen corrected. But if we refuse them, the chance to change, then we become what they were. We become the ones who decide who lives and who dies. She turned to Vexus Theta. The Zefori can apply, but there are conditions. Full disclosure of all past crimes, reparations to species you've harmed, your military technology shared with the Alliance, and a probationary period of 50 years where you have membership but no voting rights. 50 years? Vexus Theta's compound, eyes widened. The Kalari hid for 200 years because of you, Sen said from his seat. 50 years is generous. Vexus Theta's 4 arms drooped, but he had no choice. We accept. Outside the station, space looked very different than it had 6 months ago. Instead of segregated fleets maintaining suspicious distances, ships from different species flew in mixed formations. A human destroyer sailed beside a Karathi battlecruiser. Andromedan crystal ships shared technology with Milani cloud vessels. The Threen colony ship was being escorted by a volunteer force from 7 different species. On Earth, President Maria Santos was giving a speech to the United Governments of Humanity. The planet that had almost been destroyed by an alien bioweapon was now the de facto capital of galactic freedom. We could have become conquerors, she said to the assembled leaders. After our victory, no one could have stopped us from taking the Council's place. We could have ruled through strength as they did. She paused, looking at the faces of humans who had lived through the fear of the past months, who had lost family, on Colony 7 who had every reason to want revenge. But that would have made us no better than them. Instead, we chose a harder path. We chose to teach rather than punish, to build rather than destroy, to free rather than rule. And look what we've accomplished. The screens behind her showed images from across the galaxy. Kellari cubs playing in rebuilt cities, Threen ships launching toward new homes, Ventari populations recovering with human medical aid, former enemies working together on joint projects. This is humanity's gift to the galaxy, Santos continued. Not our weapons or our tactics, but our belief that anyone can change, that any species can choose to be better than they were. Back at the Alliance station, a new arrival was requesting permission to dock. It was a ship no one recognized, using technology that didn't match any known species. Karen and Frank went to meet it, accompanied by a security detail that included members from multiple species. The airlock opened, and out walked beings that looked like living shadows, their forms shifting and changing. The universal translator struggled with their language for a moment before finding the right frequencies. "We are the Void Dancers," their representative said, its voice like whispered stars. "We have hidden in dark space for 3,000 years, since before even the Council's rise. We fled when we saw what the galaxy was becoming." The being shifted, its form solidifying slightly. "We watched your battle 6 months ago. We saw mercy where we expected massacre. We saw freedom offered where we expected slavery imposed. For the first time in 3 millennia, we have hope that it is safe to return." Frank and Karen exchanged glances. How many other species were out there, hiding in the darkness between stars, waiting for it to be safe to come home? "You're welcome here," Karen said. "The Free Systems Alliance is open to all who come in peace." As the months turned to years, more hidden species emerged. The galaxy that had seemed empty, controlled by a few dozen species, was revealed to be teeming with life that had been driven into hiding. Each new arrival brought unique technologies, different perspectives, and fresh innovations. The Zephori, true to their agreement, shared their vast technological archives. What they had hoarded for millennia was now freely available. Combined with human innovation and the unique sciences of other species, advancement accelerated beyond anything previously imagined. Ships that could cross the galaxy in days. Medical technology that could cure diseases thought incurable. Terraforming that could make dead worlds bloom in years instead of centuries. All of it shared freely among Alliance members. 5 years after the battle, Frank Rodriguez stood in his garden on Earth watching the sunset. His granddaughter, born after the Alliance was formed, played in the yard. Above them, the sky was filled with ships from a dozen species, coming and going freely, no longer a threat, but a promise of the connected galaxy humanity had helped create.